Hi everybody, it's Monday, it's 1 o'clock, so it's time for History and Hashkafa, Pirkei Avot, brought to you by the Tel Aviv International Synagogue, headed by Rabbi Ariel Constantine. We are going to finish, we'll first do an examination of the last two Mishnayot of the second chapter of, that a little bit, of the second chapter of Pirkei Avot. And it's appropriate, especially today, after the passing and the funeral and burial of one of the great Torah scholars of our generation, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, that the two Mishnayot with which the second chapter concludes are tailor-made for the occasion, and as I hope we'll see, they are also tailor-made for the run-up towards Pesach, which started on Thursday or Friday, depending on when you celebrated Purim. So, the Mara Deshmatata, the person who authored, the person who was wont to say the things that in the last two Mishnayot, was Rabbi Tarfon, who was a friend and colleague and intellectual adversary of Rabbi Akiva. And the Mishnah goes as follows, which we need spectacles. Rabbi Tarfon Omer, Rabbi Tarfon was wont to say, Hayom Katzar, the day is short, V'amelacha meruba, and the work is great, there's a lot to do. V'poalim atzilim, people are lazy, the workers are lazy. V'sachar harbei, but the reward or the salary or the payoff is great. Ubala bayad dochek, and the boss is urgent. He wants things done. Everybody across the board understands this Mishnah as referring to this Torah study. So if we do it simply, and then we're going to go into the next one, we'll see how it continues. It means that life is short. Life is short. We begin to realize how short life is once we get past the midway, if not earlier. Talk about midlife crisis. Midlife crisis is always a function of realizing that youth is not forever and that we are mortal, and that's what's in Dante, for example, into his great self-exploration, which became the head of became expressed in the Divine Comedy. It begins in mezzo del cammin de nostra vita, halfway through our life's journey. He was 35 at the time, assuming that as it says in Psalms, that people live approximately 70 years. Thank God today it's not all so it's often more than that. But anyways, the day is short. You should be aware of the fact that the day is short. And the task, the job, the project at hand is huge. What that means, Torah study. There's a lot of Torah to learn. I mean, it's just enormous. Endless, because you can, endless in terms of its breadth and endless in terms of its depth. That's why the Torah is compared to an ocean, because there are parts of the ocean that human beings can't get to. As low as we go, as far as we go, there's more and more depth, and the waters are endless. Anybody who's ever gone sailing knows that the horizon just goes on and on and on. Then so is the Torah. Vasachar harbei, but the reward will be great. The reward will be great. That's an interesting question. And if we were just to confine ourselves to this first Mishnah, I would say that the reward can be in this world and the next world. Because if we follow Maimonides, for example, living a Torah life, and really living a Torah life, not being sincere and not being a faker and not being dishonest and so on, makes for a better world in this world, and certainly it guarantees us a place in the world to come. And eternity is always greater than there's longer than than the 70, 80, 90, 100, even 120 years. God wants us to live a good life. He wants us to study Torah. That's why kilakach notzarta. That's what we were. We saw this earlier. That's why we were created. We were created to study Torah. Jews were created to do mitzvahs. That's what we're here for. The ultimate why is because God wanted it, but this is the task. Now that doesn't exclude other tasks, but it's a question of priorities, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And then Rabbi Tarfon would add to that the previous series of aphorisms. As it said, Zion, hu haya omer, but he would add, he would also say, Lo alechem lacha ligmor, v'lo ata ben chorin lihibatel mimena. You're not expected to finish it all. The Torah is too big. But that's not an excuse for not giving it everything that you have. Everything that you have, because first of all, every person has their capacities. Maimonides, it's interesting. Throughout the Mishnah Torah, whenever he comes up with makes a statement like this, you're supposed to do this and do this and do this, it's always lefi kocho. You are not expected to be somebody else. Famous story about Zusha, Reb Zusha of Hannibal, but you're not expecting somebody else. You have to be you, to the greatest you that you are, and not somebody, and not what other people can do. Everybody's Torah is different. It's interesting. There's a famous statement by Rabbi Shlomo Luri in the 16th century. He says that every Jew at Sinai heard a separate Torah. It doesn't mean that everyone can make it up as they want, but your relationship with God and your relationship to His Word, capital H, capital W, is going to be different. Lo alechem lacha ligmor is we're not expecting you to do everything, but we're assuming everything that you can do. V'yata ben chorin libatel mimena, and you're not free to say, well, it's too much for me, I can't. That's a very important point, and one of the things that I think some people took away from Rav Kanievsky's life is the amazement that the kind of order, the kind of schedule he kept, that he went through literally every major rabbinic work in the course of he did Navi and Tanakh and all of the Mishnah and all the Tosefta and all the Babylonian Talmud and the Palestinian Talmud and the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch and on and on and on and on every single year. That's all he did. So you could say that's amazing, but you'd always say, what's the use? What's the use? I can't be him. How can I be like him? And especially if I didn't start when I'm 2 or 5 and I'm not a prodigy, so why should I start? I think that's exactly what Rabbi Tarfon is saying. We all have an obligation from this minute on to do the maximum that we can do in terms of learning Torah. And Torah is a very broad thing. Some people will be different people have different talents for different things. Gemara, for example, at a high level, is not for everybody. Even if you have the kind of intelligence to do it, doesn't mean you're going to find it interesting or meaningful. Doesn't mean you should learn Gemara. You should at least know halacha. But some people are better at Bible and commentaries. Some people are stronger in Mishnah. Other people, again, halacha. Some people are better at Jewish philosophy. You have to be literate in the basics, but different people find their souls are expressed in ways that are more appropriate for other disciplines. That's the reason why throughout Jewish history, arrangements were always made for people to study at their level and according to their interests. The Talmud says in Tractate of Avodah Zarah, Ki im b'Torat Hashem chavtso, that the first chapter in Tehillim, that a person's desire should be in the Torah, in God's Torah. And so the Gemara comments, it says, Ein adam lomed ela makom sheli bo chafetz. You study what interests you. You study what draws you. And there's certainly enough in Torah that you can be more than intrigued and engrossed in some area which will be yours. That is going to be yours. So it's similar to a statement that was once made by Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, that yes, there are 613 mitzvahs. All right, nobody keeps 613 mitzvahs because a lot of them aren't relevant today, and a lot of them aren't relevant to every individual, and so on. So the Rambam says there are about 60 mitzvahs that are relevant to us. Think about that, and think how much of a challenge what we have is as it is. And says Rav Salanter said, but you should choose one mitzvah that's your mitzvah. In other words, do them all. You have no choice, although. But do them all. But do one really well. One is going to be your mitzvah. That's going to be your area of expertise. And that's the response to this. What's the use? You know, lo alechem lecha ligmor. You're not supposed to do everything. You're not supposed to know everything. You know, Rav Chaim Kanievsky had his set seder. He had a set group, subjects that he studied. I didn't hear any mention of the fact that he was studying Jewish philosophy. I didn't hear any mention of the fact that he was studying responsa, which is you could fill 5 buildings with responsa. I didn't hear. I mean, because it's the nature of the beast. I mean, and he went for depth instead of breadth, or whatever the case might be. So you are swimming. That's the point. And it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process of growth, which you can start at any given minute. Either by making excuses or whatever the case might be. Says, he continues, Rabbi Tarfon, Im lamadeta Torah harbe, nimlecha sachar harbe. If you studied a lot of Torah, then you receive a lot of reward. Now, what's the reward? This already speaks to a broader approach, which really depends on in what world, from what outlook, and from what way of what religious orientation do you approach your Torah study. What do I mean? If you are a student of Maimonides, if you're straight, if you just don't know from Chachmas, right? No philosophy, no Kabbalah, no mysticism, nothing. Then you read this as saying, the more Torah I know, the more God will reward my soul in the next world, that I'll be in a more rarefied place, and I can be able to be in His presence, capital H, capital P, when the time comes, because it is what you learn, what your soul absorbs, what your intellect absorbs, which is going to last to 120. If you are philosophically inclined, then you will say that the more Torah I learn, it depends. The more Torah I learn with regard to commandments that regularize the world, the better world I will live in, and that's my reward. And that'll give me the opportunity, give me the wherewithal, give me the peace of mind to be able to delve into those mitzvot which are of more metaphysical and more, not mystical, but physical, philosophical import, those which are called chukim, the ones which require more contemplation in order to be able to understand them. If you're a mystic, or if you're a chassid, the more Torah you learn, the greater reward you'll have in terms of perfecting the world and bringing the Mashiach. And then the more you do that, then you'll have a greater role in the next world. But it's clear that according to the Ari, for example, the more mitzvot you do with the proper intention will perfect the world on a mystical sense. That's the real tikkun olam according to the Ari. It's not just the sort of a nebulous kind of do nice things. Then you'll really bring the redemption. And the more you do it, the more that goal will be reached. The truth is, there's another thing. There's another dimension. That other dimension is both. It's interesting. It's one of these places where Chassidut and Hitnagdut, where the Litvaks and the Chassidim, or the Misnagdim and the Chassidim sort of meet in a very real sense, is the act of Talmud Torah is an active encounter with God. They get to it differently. The Rav Soloveitchik, for example, based on the Nefesh HaChaim of Rav Chaim Volozhiner, which is his Misnagdic manifesto, says that simply by encountering God's word, you have a conversation with God, and you meet Him on not on common ground. There's always a distance, but there is this profound sense of being enveloped in God's presence. Something we talked about last week when I talked about the sacred canopy. Judging from, it's probably best communicated through the Tanya, but judging from the Tanya and Likutei Torah of Lubavitch, the Torah is an extension of God, and the Torah is the place where God and where this world and where this world and the higher world or God and man sort of, it's common territory. It's very hard to explain that at some stage the two worlds really do touch each other, and that's Torah study. That by itself is a reward, because it makes life meaningful. It makes life, infuses life with meaning. That's what Yisachar Harbe also. You can rely on God to give you your reward. But you should know that the reward that's given to the righteous is in the next world. Now, this is an interesting question, what this means, because this could mean a lot of things. First of all, it could be taken to mean, contrary to everything I've said so far, that that everything that we do in this world is for the sake of next world, and that includes Talmud Torah. And there are commentaries who go along those lines. The problem with it is that the Torah is full of promises that people will see some kind of return for their investment in this world as well. So I prefer to understand this statement by Rabbi Tarfon to mean that that most of what you're going to get out of your immersion in Torah, which by the way leads to inevitably and ineluctably to observance, will be in the next world, Latid Lavo, but certainly not restricted there too. I say that because there is a statement in the Talmud Yevamot. Those of you doing Daf Yomi are now struggling through the first chapter of Yevamot. But when we get to the fourth chapter, which talks about conversion, has a few pages there talking about conversion. One of the things that you tell converts or prospective converts is you should know that at the end of the day, Israel will receive most of its reward in the next world. That's probably in response to the fact that Jewish life has not always been easy. I'm not so sure it's easy now, but certainly it's been harder. And other times, certainly Jews in Ukraine and even in Russia are going through hard times right now. That the need for awareness of the fact that the awareness of that fact says, well, where's all the reward? So most of it's the next year in the next world. I have there's no question that that's the case. I mean, everything is we see in Pirkei Avos also later that this world is an antechamber to the banquet hall, and the banquet hall is the next world. And I said as eternity is that eternity is longer than this world, and so on and so forth. I however wonder about the Latid Lavo here. And it may be my own fantasies. It may not be. I don't know. I didn't see anybody who said exactly what I'm going to suggest. But it does, I think, does emerge out of things I've said already and things that we've studied over the past, it's going to be almost 3 years. It's really quite amazing. One of the things that we talk about, when we talk about Shabbat, we say that Shabbat is Me'en Olam Haba. That's a foretaste of the world to come. And mystics, especially Hasidim, make a big deal of the fact that Hanukkah is 8 days, because the 8th day is the day after Shabbat, which is the day of redemption. I would like to suggest, in light of the other things I said today, that one of the things about Torah study, properly done with the right intention, out of reverence, detaching oneself from the outside world, is that studying Torah is an entry into Olam Haba. At least that's how I learned or tried to see it. And as I heard from Reb Soloveitchik Zatzal more than once, that there is a dimension, there is a spiritual dimension, there is an encounter with the divine which takes place when you're studying Torah, which puts everything in around you into perspective, and is transformative. You're in a different dimension of life when that happens, different dimension of experience. Here, Reb Chaim Kanievsky may very well be is a good example. He apparently lived almost 24/7 in this other dimension of reality. Not all of us can or should be there, but each one according to their own abilities and their own desires and their own sensitivities and how they've worked on themselves, can achieve the fact that when you open up a sefer and you study it not as a text, I've had this discuss this with you a few times, not as a text. Text is just something you read. It's something with distance. If you study Torah with reverence and with warmth, and let the warmth and the light of Torah infuse you or envelop your actions, doesn't mean you're not being rational, doesn't mean you're not being critical, but it means that the experience is all encompassing and all enveloping. Then you already have a taste of Scharan Shel Tzadikim. You already know what that is going to be, and in fact, that's why sort of the rabbis project this idea that that's what they do in heaven, is sit and study, because learning Torah is not the same as any other intellectual activity. I would like to, in the time that we have left, I'd just like to add one thing. What I've been I haven't said much about what you're studying. I talked about curricula, but in all of the cases that I mentioned, whether it's studying in Yaakov, studying Gemara, studying Chumash, whatever the case might be, we're talking about theoretical studies. Torah Torah, what Reb Chaim Volozhiner would call Torah Lishma, Torah for its own sake, meaning just knowing God's Torah for its own sake, which is an end in itself. However, a number of the commentaries make the proper point that that Hayom Katzar is not just your life is short, but the day is short. You have to somehow put together making a living and doing all kinds of other stuff, but also keeping mitzvot. And how do you know keeping mitzvot? How do you know how to keep mitzvot? You learn Torah. Balabayit Dochek say some of the medieval commentaries, is God wants you not only to study, He wants you to observe. If He wants you to observe, it means you have to know the laws and know where they come from and know the reasons to be able to properly fulfill your obligations to keep keep mitzvot. That speaks to one of the aspects of Torah study that I don't think appreciate sufficiently. When you study, so there is a sense I think that some people have, at least I've heard it, that if you study Torah to be able to know what the law is, how to function, that's sort of on a lower level, So it's pragmatic. It's not totally pure. No, it's the same way that let's put it this way. It's sort of like the attitude that theoretical physicists have towards applied physicists. Yeah, theoretical physicists, they're the real thinkers, right? If you ever watch the Big Bang Theory, the way that Sheldon and Leonard treat Howard, who's an engineer, but he can only do stuff, is indicative of that. And you find that in a lot of places, the person who knows Torah is sort of on a purely theoretical and purely unapplied level. That's the person who's really the true Talmud Chacham, as opposed to the person, he goes to be a rabbi, it's not really important. Or it's a lesser important. I think that's absolutely wrong. because theoretical knowledge is critical to observance. And they have to be tied together. And the way that they're tied together is as follows. Unless you combine, you combine. Rav Soloveitchik always taught us that unless you can combine your mind and your intellectual knowledge with your heart, you're going to be out of kilter. And the most important way to strengthen and deepen your observance of mitzvot is by knowing not just the halachot, but also the underlying logic and the underlying ideas which infuse and which generate and which vivify those halachot. And that is the reason why there are two very, very interesting, often cited but often misunderstood admonitions or obligations regarding, for example, the study of the laws of the holidays. And since we're in the run up to Pesach, and since that's where it actually gets the most, these rules get the most emphasis, I'll mention those. The Gemara says in Pesachim, in Tractate Pesachim, it deals with the laws of Pesach. It says, Shaolin v'dorshin behilchot ha-Pesach chodav ha-Pesach lamed yom. You should start inquiring and looking up and immersing yourself in the laws of Pesach before Pesach 30 days. And that's the reason why, for example, some people, the rules, for example, if you're going away and you leave before Purim, you don't have to, and you're not coming back for Pesach to your whatever house, you don't have to do b'tikat chametz because it's not related. The Pesach hasn't become an actual thing yet. If you leave afterwards, it's already Pesach time. So there's this idea that the 30 days in the run-up to Pesach are already sort of anticipating Pesach. That rule, said the Rav, is you study because you need it. So Pesach is very hard. You have to know what you're kosher, not kosher. This is what's chametz, what's not chametz, what you keep, what you don't, what you buy. I don't have to tell you. I don't tell everybody what the kinds of issues that come up. And then there's another halacha, which is cited in a number of different places in Shas, that Moses already ordained that when people come to celebrate the holidays, they should study the laws and examine and deepen and delve into the laws of the holidays on each specific holiday. You learn the laws of Pesach on Pesach, the laws of Sukkot on Sukkot, and the laws of Shavuos on Shavuos. So he says, what's it going to help you? It's too late. If it's the first day of Pesach already, to learn all the dinim of what's chametz and what's matzah and the laws of the Seder after the Seder, you missed the boat. And the same thing over here, the first day of Sukkot, if you didn't get yourself a lulav and esrog already, if you didn't already build a sukkah, forget it. It's all over. So what did you accomplish? So the Rav said, the learning of the laws and of the underlying rationales of the laws, it's not just a matter of pragmatic how to do stuff. You can look at a YouTube video for that. There's halachic YouTube videos also. Delving into the laws deepens our appreciation and our experience and the totality of the experience of the holiday. Because without it, you can't just have some kind of amorphous emotional reaction or enjoyment of a holiday. You have to engage your entire being, and engaging your entire being means the mind as well, because then things all of a sudden become integrated, and you start thinking, and as you do the mitzvot, you relate to the sources of the mitzvot, whether it's the Chumash, whether it's in the commentaries, or whether it's in the Gemara, and it's a whole other. It's transformative in terms of the way that we observe the holidays. Now so in other words, that's another angle of the Torah study Torah study that impacts not just on your soul, but on the way that you're actually doing the mitzvot. And in fact, it's not just confined to the Torah study you undertake on the holiday itself, but even in the run-up, in those 30 days, you're looking up to see what where you sit there and what am I going to do? What's going to be kicking out this year? And do I eat quinoa? Do I not eat quinoa? And whatever. But there's more than that. unless you study and develop ideas and develop the spiritual ideas that infuse the holiday, when the holiday arrives, you won't be ready. That's why one of the things that a person absolutely must do while they're worrying about what's chametz and what's not is to make a place that's not chametz, that has no chametz. Take down the Haggadah. Now is the time to study the Haggadah. Now is the time to prepare and to start thinking about the issues that should be raised at the Seder and through all 7 days. There are no other mitzvahs in the 7 days. The whole holiday is meant to explore the significance of the Exodus from Egypt. The whole holiday is meant to explore the meaning of liberation and of the run-up to get to the giving of the Torah. There's nothing else to do except to avoid. And if you don't eat matzah, there's no mitzvah to eat matzah after the first night. The whole, in a very profound sense, the function of the rest of Pesach is to keep reading, keep understanding the Haggadah and everything that comes off of it as we enter into the run-up towards Shavuos, and to understand what does it mean to be a Jew. And all of that is also Talmud Torah. So that to sum up, hello, Hayom Katzar, the day is short, V'mlacham Ruba, there's a lot to do. Not just on a daily basis, but also when it comes to the holidays. And it's not that we're lazy, but you sit there and say, it's too much. And I'd rather watch television. Or maybe we are lazy. Maybe we don't want to work hard. Or maybe we're distractible. Too distractible. Either way, God is urgent. God is urgent that we study on a regular basis. God is urgent that we do more than we're doing now. It's possible to have your hours expand. Everybody has their own type of self-discipline to study. Learn one new commentary. Read one new book. Doesn't have to be in Hebrew, English, French, Italian, doesn't matter. God is urgent. Not that we become Reb Chaim Kanievsky, but everybody should be whoever they are. And according to what attracts them, what interests them, and bring that to bear on observance and on one's total personality. Because when you organize, and that's without I'd like to close, when you organize your personality, when you're aware of something, and that becomes your time of awareness, you adjust your entire outlook on life. So, for example, in his commentary on Likutei Sichot a few weeks ago, the late Rabbi Steinsaltz makes an amazing comment. He says, he was talking about God awareness. And he says, look, at everybody who's a mamin, everybody who believes in God. But whether God is at the center of our awareness or not will make all the difference in how we live our lives. If he's at the center of our awareness, then our priorities will be adjusted. Our ideas will be adjusted. The activities that we indulge in will be adjusted accordingly. And he said, and he compares it, and with that we'll close. He compares it to our sense of our mortality. We all know that we're mortal. Everybody knows that they're mortal. But if one's awareness of one's mortality is front and center, I don't mean you should be morbid. I don't mean you should be morose. But if it's something you're really aware of, well then all of a sudden, you look at things differently. And that's exactly what Rabbi Tarfon is saying. The day is short. Be aware of the day is short. Not that you get depressed, but they should maximize your time, because time is a gift. Time is a gift. Life is a gift. And should be used in the best way possible. And God is urgent, but the reward is there. And with that, we finish the second chapter of Pirkei Avot. Next week we will go to chapter 3. And in the meantime, we'll see you. Bye.